This is Colon Meet Cancer, brought to you by A Shot in the Arm Media. I preface this episode, Finding Chemo, by a statement that some might find controversial. Chemo is your friend. Chemo is not your enemy. Now, chemo is no angel, but neither is chemo the devil. And anyway, he's too busy suing South Park for alleging that he slept with Donald Trump. Okay, so maybe chemo is more like a close relative. You love them, but my God, do they have issues. And you need to know when to walk away, give them time out, but you still love them to bits. Chemotherapy has its roots, like so much innovation in the 20th century, in its 2 world wars. On the battlefields of France, it was discovered that tissues from soldiers poisoned with mustard gas showed lymphatic tissue and bone marrow destruction, leading medical researchers immediately after the war to wonder whether mustard gas might treat cancer in lymph nodes. Well, fast forward to the Second World War, and scientists discovered that people exposed to mustard gas developed significantly reduced white blood cell counts. 2 prominent Yale pharmacologists, Alfred Gilman and Louis Goodman, examined therapeutic effects of mustard agents in treating lymphoma. And so, a revolution in cancer treatment was born from violence. Chemo gets a bad rap. You can find it referred to as poison. Well, isn't everything at the right dose? Causing more pain and suffering than the cancer it's aiming to treat? And that it is unnatural. And that's where I'd like to close out this preface by observing that some chemotherapies have their roots firmly in nature. The one that immediately comes to mind is paclitaxel, used extensively in breast and ovarian cancer treatment. It is derived from the bark of the Pacific yew tree. Or one that I'm taking, which is made from the natural compound camptothecin, which is found in the Chinese ornamental tree Camptothecin acuminata. So there. Well, my first cycle started just under 2 weeks ago, and in 4 days I'll start the second round. In this podcast, I want to talk about the experience, talk about the chemo itself, and as a starting point, contextualize it all in the multidisciplinary care I'm receiving. It's all-round care with chemo an essential but not the only component of it. With nursing, psychosocial care, and supportive care, what I'm calling their palliative care services. Palliative is just too loaded a term for me at the moment. The use of chemo in my treatment is the perfect expression of the interplay between science and art. The doctor is called to do no harm above all else. So I'll start with the update call I had with the oncologist. That happened about a week after the therapy started. I thought that perhaps the appointment was a bit premature. What was he going to say about efficacy at this early stage? What could he know unless there was something he did know that I didn't know and had missed? But his concern was how I was managing with side effects. What was I experiencing? How might we address them? And what to expect going forward? At the end, and I was a bit cheeky, I asked him what he might want to see from this podcast series. Break the silence, he said. Tackle the fear, he said. Which was reassuring, of course, because that's exactly what I want to do. So let me tell you what my friend chemo is. It's an unholy brew of different agents. I have mentioned in previous episodes that it is based on the Tribe 2 regimen, from a trial that showed strong, albeit uneven, evidence for aggressive multi-chemotherapy for advanced right-side colorectal cancer. The treatment is spread over 46 hours, 6 to 8 of those at the Kaiser infusion clinic, and the remainder with a pump attached to me to take home. Eric and I walk in. We're only 5 minutes late, and that's my fault. I've just got off a call co-chairing a board meeting of the Staying Alive Foundation, and we're met by yet another terrific Kaiser nurse guiding us through the day. In fact, I know her from previous monoclonal antibody treatment infusions for Crohn's disease I get at the same clinic. Earlier in the morning, I have smothered the skin over the chemo port with lidocaine cream and then covered that with saran wrap, so when the needle to conduct the chemotherapy into my body goes in, I don't feel a thing. The nurse admires the surgeon's work. She's the second to do so. So first up, 2 long-acting anti-nausea medications are infused. And then the first of the treatment is bevacizumab. I can't say this, can I? Then the first of the treatments to be infused is bevacizumab, another monoclonal antibody that slows the growth of new blood vessels. This helps stop the cancer spreading to other parts of the body. Then, irinotecan, which blocks the DNA replication of the cancer cells. Now, I get a kick out of its mode of action. It blocks the enzyme topoisomerase, which is crucial for DNA unwinding and replication. By blocking this enzyme, irinotecan causes double-strand DNA breaks. In other words, it rips apart both strands of the DNA. Nothing gets past that. Nothing can survive that. And the cancer cell dies. And then the killer chemo, in every sense. Oxaliplatin. I'm getting the platinum service here, and yes, you are right. It is indeed derived from platinum. It has the most brutal and direct side effects, which I experience almost immediately. I've nodded off, but I wake up with a swollen tongue. I'm cold, and my jaw hurts. When I try to speak, I sound like Boris Johnson or my parents' old MP, Desmond Swayne. You'll recall he's the one who hid in the ladies' lavatory to avoid my mother. And actually, if I want to be particularly whiny enough, I could be Nigel Farage, cigarette between lips, pint of beer in hand, and a Molotov cocktail inside my mouth. The nurse brings me a nice cup of warm water. I drink it, and the swelling subsides. Now, this is a little bit freaky. How this cancer chemotherapy works is not fully understood, but it seems to force its way into the strands of all and any DNA of cells, those even thinking of replication, therefore causing their death. It's the one we have to be most cautious of, because it causes peripheral neuropathy, something in the HIV treatment world we know very well. This is where the drug causes damage to the nerves, particularly in the hands and feet. It can be permanent. And with oxaliplatin, that materializes as numbness, tingling, or hypersensitivity to cold. It's something the oncologist is most anxious to monitor because it builds up with cycles of chemotherapy. If it reaches a tipping point, it cannot be reversed. And it's the cause, the bastard, of why I can't eat anything cold, including the lovely mango Greek yogurt still sitting in the fridge. It is infused at the same time with leucovorin, also known as folinic acid, because it enhances the effects of the very next chemo that I'm going to be infused with. So a pump is attached to the port, and then fluorouracil, otherwise known, and this is probably much easier for me, as 5-FU. Yeah, I think we'll stick with 5-FU. I could say that till the cows come home. Now, that's infused over 46 hours. 46 hours because that is the time and constant dosing which gives it the maximum time to kill as many cancer cells as possible. The pump is the size of and looks a lot like a lemon. After all that, we go home and I go to sleep. I can't let the dogs near me because they might get entangled in the tubes connecting my pump to the port, and it's all sitting in a natty little Kaiser Permanente fanny pack. Oh, the fanny pack. Not quite a Vivienne Westwood bum bag, or what the male equivalent of that is. Actually, let me just check. Oh shit, that's interesting. Androgynous. Vivienne Westwood bum bags are androgynous. Don't tell that to Republicans. But I really need to find something a bit classier and a bit more comfortable than the People's Democratic Republic of Kaiser Permanente freebie that I've been given. I'm calling this fanny pack Mifanwi. So anyway, that's the Wednesday. On the Friday afternoon, we go back to the infusion centre and they show Eric, how to remove both the pump and the injector connection into my port so that next time we won't need that second visit back into the infusion centre. So now is when the fun starts and why the oncologists' focus on trade-offs becomes so important. I lose track of time. I don't want to eat. I actually don't want to sleep. I just feel a deep, agitated malaise and a fatigue that almost drowns you. Thankfully, the worst of that clears by the Monday, mostly. But it is a trip, and during the sleep, you dream with the most obscene clarity. On the second day, I get hiccups, and they pretty much last all day. So I call the clinic and advise the nurses, and they tell me to take another of the nausea medications they've prescribed for me. And I do that with a dose of trazodone, and that does the trick. I do feel a distant sense of nausea, but it is never overpowering. Actually, Eric says I do sleep a lot, but I don't get any respite from the appalling fatigue. I don't go near any cold water. There's one moment when I put my hand in the fridge to get my oat milk, and my fingertips feel as if they are in the Arctic. It's so blisteringly cold. I don't drink coffee. Can you imagine? I don't think I've ever missed a cup of coffee since the day I was 15. And then on Sunday night, a friend and colleague arrives. It's Emily Bass. Now, I'm worried I'll be too tired or crotchety to enjoy spending time with her. And I'm worried that she may get bored or irritated with me. Well, that does not happen, not at all. Out of the mists of chemo recovery, I seem to think we have a fabulous week, the three of us, Emily, Eric and me. She works some of the time. We talk. She and Eric talk while I sleep. And I watch them eat and drink wine, which I love, because I just sip or nibble on something and I'm not able to drink wine. She chastises me for not drinking enough water. Friends have arranged with Eric to spend time with me during the 4 months I'll be on chemo. And I'll know when my body can't cope with the attention or the interaction, so then I'll just retire to the bedroom and hopefully sleep. Now, I have a phrase I use to describe a difficult, complicated, confusing, irrelevant, or just downright baffling situation, behaviour, or person. It's called "at the bottom of the garden with the fairies." So, for example, this comment or that meeting was truly at the bottom of the garden with the fairies, or that person's behaviour, attitude, and in fact, sometimes just that person, period, and trust me, there are plenty of those, Well, they're at the bottom of the garden with the fairies. Sometimes, and this has happened more frequently since our global health movement has been under attack this year, things have got so peculiar that the people, the meeting or the situation, as well as the fairies that they have met at the bottom of the garden, have all crossed over the fence and are now traipsing aimlessly in the orchard behind it. And if they aren't careful, will be heading for the riverbank, and then there will be no guessing what will happen next. Well, one afternoon, I'm taking a needed doze, and I wake up to see both dogs staring out of our bedroom sliding doors into the backyard. They are mesmerised. Who or what has bedazzled them, I wonder? And there, down at the bottom, in front of my raised plant beds, presumably sitting cross-legged on the winding path, and head poking above a parade of Sacramento native drought-tolerant plants, as well as rosemary, olive and lavender, is Emily, speaking assertively into her cell phone. And there is not, I'm delighted to say, a single fairy in sight. Now, the origins of the phrase "at the bottom of the garden with the fairies" are of little relevance, significant, or even interest to this podcast, so I'll be brief. According to Miriam Bibby, BA, MPhil, FSA Scott, a historian, Egyptologist, and archaeologist with a special interest in equine history, written in an article to be found on the website historic-uk.com. "There are fairies at the bottom of the garden" announces the opening line of a poem by Rose Fileman, first published in 1917. Coincidentally, that was also the year two intelligent and talented young girls, conspirators, managed to convince some very well-known people that there really were fairies living near Cottingley Beck, the stream that ran past the foot of their garden. So there, we've been told. Moving right along. Let me tell you what chemotherapy does. It's not complicated. It's pretty direct, so useful, and sometimes very brutal. Chemotherapies are powerful chemicals to kill fast-growing cells in our bodies. They destroy cancer cells by damaging them so they can't divide and grow. Chemotherapies kill cells that are in the process of dividing into two new cells. The chemo damages the genes inside the nucleus of a cancer cell. Different chemotherapy drugs do this in different ways. Modes of action include damaging the part of the cell's control center that make it divide, interrupting the chemical processes involved in cell division, damaging the cells while they're making copies of themselves before all their genes divide, and damaging the cells at the point of division. See, cancer cells divide much more often than normal cells, so chemotherapy is much more likely to kill them. Chemotherapy is much less likely to damage cells that are our rest, such as most of the normal cells in our bodies. But here's the rub. Chemo holds no prejudice when it comes to destroying cells as they split and divide. Thus, they don't distinguish between cancerous or healthy cells. They just destroy any cell that grows and divides quickly. So, you will see chemo destroying your hair follicles, your bone marrow, the lining of your digestive system, your skin. But not all chemos are created equally. Chemotherapies for breast cancer are pretty indiscriminate, sadly, on hair loss. And hair loss is something that is a lodestone that enshrines and captures people's fears about chemo. Now, I'm lucky in the regimen that I'm on has, allegedly, mild to moderate risk of hair loss and hair thinning, which is comforting to my ego. But the main side effect I have been experiencing is the diarrhea and constipation caused by damage to the lining of my digestive system. And that continues to be pretty severe, and to such a degree that there have been moments when I would have begged for it to have been replaced by hair loss. Let me just explain about the constipation and diarrhea. So, I'm generally constipated, but when I have to go, and it's diarrhea, and it hurts. Now, it's a confusing situation for me and the carers because I'm technically in remission from Crohn's disease, which of course causes debilitating diarrhea, amongst other things. I'm still taking my monoclonal antibody specifically for Crohn's. And I think it here is an art at play, sort of to ensure that we are tackling the symptoms, understanding what is causing them. Is it the chemo or is it Crohn's? And then therefore, what is the right treatment approach? And this is still very much a work in progress and is the single thing preventing my good days from being really fabulous days. To begin with, I got with the program and followed instructions and took moderate doses of Imodium, the brand name for loperamide, moderate being 2 to 3 doses per day. But my problem with Imodium is that it is very good at closing down the party in my intestines, but it's so good, in fact, that everything stops. And in the past, as I have dared to tempt myself back with the odd morsel and lots of hydration to replace lost water, I have created a blockage that grows and grows until, as Grandmother Plumley would say, there is an inevitable and irrevocable conflation of wind and water, and you do not want to be anywhere near me when that happens. And unfortunately, that is precisely what happened the first Sunday evening following the first chemo. Eric went to collect Emily from the airport, and I was nicely tucked up in bed, having crazy vivid dreams. Shortly after he drove off, I felt nature call with increasing urgency, and I just made it to the toilet off our bedroom with my usual speed and expediency. However, when I plonked my sorry arse on our lovely Toto toilet with fully functioning bidet, something strange happened. I was straining the muscles because, to borrow the Rolling Stones, I could get no satisfaction. And then I saw stars. I felt my body leer to the left, and I was out cold. I woke up, trapped between the toilet and the wall dividing our toilet from the rest of the bathroom. I could see that I had truly scored a conflation of wind and water, albeit not in the toilet itself, but hey, as Shrek says, better out than in. As I struggled to stand up, I saw more stars in my eyes, sensing I was losing consciousness again, and I felt my body tilting towards the open IKEA towel stand we keep in front of the toilet. And I woke up with my head nestled comfortably on one of those towels. I briefly wondered whether I could stay there forever. It took me a few minutes to come round entirely, and before Eric returned with Emily, I made a valiant attempt to clean the toilet and throw myself in the shower before collapsing back in bed. When recounting this experience to one of the oncology nurses the following day, she told me, with a little hint of amusement, that you've been vagaled. Well, that was something completely new to me. Vagaled. Basically, it's some sort of primordial response from the earliest days of our evolution. My straining had alerted the vagus nerve, which then signaled to the heart to slow down and to the blood vessels to widen. This leads and led to a drop in blood pressure, and if severe, could result in reduced blood flow to the brain, causing fainting. And that's exactly what happened. And I say primordial because the vagal nerve first appeared in primitive vertebrates, including today's reptiles, the good ones, not the Senate Republicans. It connects all major organs and is primarily involved in basic survival functions like conserving energy and triggering freeze responses in threatening situations. The psychologist Stephen Porges hypothesized in 1994 that the human vagus nerve evolved from a vegetative vagus in those primitive vertebrates, and it's now in a more complex system in mammals, supporting social engagement and emotional regulation. This evolution involved the retooling of the nerve to suppress defensive strategies and foster social interactions, not a view, by the way, accepted by the current social neuroscience field. I don't even know what a social neuroscience field is. I think I'm disappearing down too deep of a black hole. We've all got Google. You can check the social neuroscientists and check Stephen out as well. I think he would be a good guest for a Shot in the Arm podcast later on. Anyway, as I prepare for my second chemo cycle, the discomfort caused by the diarrhea, constipation conundrum has not been fully resolved, as I said, and it's going to be the key side effect I'm going to have to navigate with the care team over the coming months. Blimey, over the coming months. That is a bit galling and depressing, isn't it? One more thing to add. On the first Monday evening after my chemo, I experience in my right colon the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life. It radiates or it shocks down into my buttock and up the ascending colon. It's as if a wine bottler opener is being corkscrewed inside my flesh. It brings tears to my eyes. I can't breathe and I'm left on the bed, clenched and spasmodic. I take 2 oxycodone, which, as you'll recall, I'm allowed to do in emergencies, and by Jove, this bloody well counts as an emergency. Within half an hour, the pain subsides, leaving me weak and nauseous. I wonder if it is the result of the previous night's straining of my intestines. But during the catch-up with my oncologist, he thinks it is more likely to be caused by the largest of the tumours, the one on my cecum, which is the thing that connects the ileum to the ascending colon. And that would make sense. Lower right side and all. So, not only does colon meet cancer, I meet that damn cancer very, very directly. It hurts. And I want it gone. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, chemo is most definitely on my side. As I wrap up this episode, thank you all for the well wishes and support, and a shout out to Emily Bass and Mike Reed, not only for being fabulous, but for writing such strong, powerful reviews, which honestly brought tears to my eyes. Also, a big shout out this week to the Ukrainian Alliance for Public Health, and I'm wearing one of their t-shirts today. They are deep friends of the pod. Andrei Klepikov, Pavlo Smirnov, and an incredible team of public health professionals and community leaders. Once Ukraine's leading civil society response to HIV, they're now both providers of comprehensive care in a war where the enemy targets healthcare facilities, and they're also champions of the democratic values and ideals that underpin all of our liberal democracies, including and especially here in California. This year, I had hoped to create a series of podcasts to promote their good work, raise awareness and funds for them. Well, that's obviously not possible at the moment, but I'll attach their information in the show notes, and if there is anything you can do to support them, please do consider it. With that, thank you again for being on this journey with me.